Hi everybody, and welcome back to Plastic Models by a Regular Dude and part 2 of the Back to Basics Tamiya 1/48 scale Fairey Swordfish Mark II condensed version. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about what I've done so far. So the parts that I've gotten completed are parts 1 through 4 with a little bit of 5 and a little bit of 6. So let's start with step 1, and I'll talk a little bit about what went on, what stuff I used. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what went on. First, I had to decide which version I was going to do of this kit, and I think I talked about it in the intro video, but I'm doing C, which is the 810 Squadron, Tanzania 1942, and the reason I went with that is because I like the color scheme and the camo a little bit more. I like how the camo comes down the side and the underneath is the British sky color, which I really dig, and so that's why I went with that one. But once I had that decided, then all I had to do is make sure I paid attention through the instructions as to what to do. So let's talk about what I got built, starting with step 1. So the first thing I did was I built all of these parts as a sub-assembly, and then I built the floor, the cockpit floor, with the observer seat in position as a sub-assembly. And then I built the upper deck here with the machine gun mount as a sub-assembly. Then I built, let's see, I also built I put this seat and support together, but I haven't done the machine gun yet. So once I had all those sub-assemblies done, I used my my black ammo one-shot primer, shook it up really well, and using my Iwata Revolution SAR single action siphon feed 0.5 nozzle, I sprayed this on the parts. Got everything sprayed, and I also sprayed the instrument panel and the machine gun that attaches to the instrument panel. While I had my primer out, I went ahead and did primer on the inside of the fuselage sides, and that way everything was done and all I had to do was paint it. So once I got everything primed, then I started with some paint. So the Tamiya instructions call for 1 part XF5, 3 parts XF21, and 1 part XF65 to make the interior color. After I did a little bit of reading and research as to what colors people have used on these things, XF71, which is cockpit green, and in parentheses it says IJN, but a lot of people have used this, and it does give a really nice interior green color without having to mix it up. And the main reason, I mean, I don't mind mixing paint, I'll do it quite a bit actually, but sometimes if I have a color that's really close, I'll use that instead. That way I know I have enough. I don't have to worry about mixing not quite enough and running out and having to mix a new batch, or mixing up too much and having left over. So that's why I did that. So all the parts that were supposed to be that color, I sprayed. Once I got that done, then I real quick, like the radio, I painted that separately as well because it was black. So I got all that painted. I did not put the seat cushion on the observer seat. I left that off since it's a different color, but I did prime everything at the same time. So once I got that painted and all the parts up here that are supposed to be the interior green color painted, I went ahead and sprayed the interior green on the inside of the fuselage halves. That way I got all that stuff done at the same time. And as you can see here, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, I sprayed the whole inside, and then I had to do some additional painting too, but I'll get to that in a minute. So once I got all that stuff painted and to a point where I could assemble the parts, I assembled the parts. Almost forgot, I used, for this color right here, this is supposed to be XF16, which is matte aluminum, flat aluminum. I used Vallejo acrylic metal color aluminum, and I just brush painted it on. It's actually formulated for airbrushes, but it's it also works really well with a brush, so I painted that on there as well, as well as these two panels right here on the pilot's kind of like little deck where his seat goes. Once I got that stuff painted, then I focused on some detail painting, and almost everything is black that needs to be detail painted in the cockpit. This control lever here, whatever it is, this lever here, the stirrups for the rudder pedals, the yoke on the control stick, extra magazines for the machine gunner, this wheel here, which I'm assuming is for flaps or something. It's on the side of the cockpit, don't know for sure. And this little deck and kind of a machine gun mount here, trunnion I guess you might call it, as well as these smaller parts here that have to be glued on, and then some that are molded on. So I got all those painted, and with that done, then I could assemble everything. So I got the whole thing assembled. Once I got it assembled, after I had painted the seat cushion a leather color and the back of the pilot seat cushion a leather color, this was pretty much done. I did have to do some detail painting on the radio before I assembled all this, and I just used some silver for these two knobs, or these three knobs here, used white for these other knobs, and got some really thin white, and just kind of did a real kind of a thick wash but real runny paint. So all I had to do is basically touch it into the cavity there, since it is pretty recessed, and let the paint just kind of fill that up with white. And you can't really see it that great inside of there, but it turned out pretty good, especially since you're not going to be able to see it once I get the pilots in place. So all that stuff was glued together. Once I got all that glued together, did some test fitting with the upper deck, and it fit nicely. So I glued all of that. So that concluded up to step 4 minus the machine gun, which I'm going to do later because I don't want it to break off while I'm masking stuff off and everything else. But as far as the fit and finish, or the fit, everything fit together perfectly. There was no weird stuff going on. Nothing was out of alignment. This part right here, as you can see in the instructions, it's like this inverted V here and an inverted V here that fit together around this part of the deck. So this part right here fits in here, and as long as you bottom it out, what I did is I used some tweezers and I made sure it was bottomed out completely. You're gonna have a really hard time messing it up. I just pressed it down into place, ran my glue along the edges, and let it dry. And as long as this front and back piece, whenever you push the surface together, just make sure they are flat and aligned in its angled configuration there. No problems. It fit all of the 4 holes where it mounts here with no problems. And then when the upper deck goes into place, it has this little hole here that fits on top of a little pin on top of those 2 inverted V's, lined right up, boom. Even if you had to flex it a little bit, it wouldn't be that big a deal. but it did fit together really well. So all that was done. Finished the detail painting, and the cockpit is finished. So the next thing I did is whenever I painted the interior green on the cockpit, I painted it on the inside of the fuselage as well. It was already primed black, so what I did first is there's two little pieces of glass that go on the sides of the fuselage, both sides. This one's a little bit longer, a little shorter one there. And what I did is I just used some masking tape and some little masking dots that I purchased, and masked off the inside and the outside. Once I got the inside painted, I was able to peel it off, and it worked great. For the inside of these panels right here, I did a little checking on that because these kind of aircraft I'm totally unfamiliar with. I didn't know if it was wood or what it was, but apparently what this is in here is the interior of the fabric covering that's stretched over these ribs. And basically what this was doped fabric, and the dope that they use for it to pull it tight and to give it some structure is red, and then they would paint over it. And it was painted over with like an off-white color, I guess. But after just, you know, a short period of time, the paint would begin to flake off and the red would show through a little bit. Now, the instructions call for XF59, which is desert yellow. And I thought that sounded kind of odd. That's why I did a little bit of research. And sure enough, I wouldn't recommend using that color unless, you know, I mean, I guess it really doesn't matter because you're not going to see it once everything's together, because this is going to be blocking it off for the most part. And, you know, you'll be able to see it a little bit, but I went with what they recommend, or what I'd seen in the photo. So what I used was an off-white color that I had mixed up at some point for the interior of a Panzer tank, German Panzer. And so it was a nice off-white color. And then I got some, I believe I used, let me find it here. I'm having trouble. There it is. I used XF64 red brown. Mixed it up really thin. Just barely misted it on there. But I didn't worry about getting nice coverage. I wanted it to be a little bit fuzzy so it would look like, kind of simulate that red showing through without being a bright red, because I was afraid if I put that on, a bright red on over the white, it might end up looking more pink, and I didn't really want that. So that's what I did. Once I did that, I realized, well, I should have probably done that first and then masked it and painted the green, but whatever. So I made some masks and stuck on the inside here, and then just shot some more of the XF71 on the ribs, then peeled off the tape, so I was good to go. Okay, so with that, everything is finished up to that point. As far as the figures go, I've got them ready to paint, and I check to make sure that they will fit after the model's put together, and it will. So I'll deal with those later, but I did glue the pilot's arm on. The observer, he came molded as one piece, and the machine gunner, both of his arms have to be glued on, but you know, you have to kind of position them according to where the machine gun is, so that'll come later. So that's pretty much it up to this point. So the next in the next video, I will be starting with step 6 and gluing the fuselage together with the cockpit after I clear out some holes and stuff, but I'll talk about that later. And then move on to 7 and just go however far I think I can go in the next video. So I hope you enjoyed this condensed version of the Tamiya 1/48 scale Fairey Swordfish Mark II Back to Basics kit. So if you like the condensed version, let me know in the comment section down below. If you prefer the long version, you can watch that. I will add a link in the top corner somewhere or on the end page, so you can watch the full version of the whole thing being put together if you want. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching Plastic Models by a Regular Dude, and I will see you all later.